Good morning, everybody. A very warm welcome to the Smart Nation MU Let's Learn webinar on blockchain and how it is revolutionizing the world. Now, my name is Karen and I'll be your host for today. Now, Singapore's Smart Nation initiative is all about using technology to improve the way we live, we work, and we play. And to realize this vision, it is important for Singaporeans to be equipped with digital skills, so that you and I, we can take advantage of new exciting job opportunities, especially during this period of time when many of us are concerned about our careers. Now, this is why the Smart Nation and Digital Government Office and NTUC Learning Hub are glad to bring you the Smart Nation NU Let's Learn Festival. NTUC Learning Hub is proud to be the official continuing education and training provider, powering this Let's Learn segment of this exciting event with something for everyone. Now, today's webinar is on blockchain and how it is revolutionizing the world. Now, do note that this session will be recorded. So if you'd like to recap your learnings, you can always visit the Smart Nation YouTube channel. A recording of the various sessions will be made available about 2 weeks after the festival. Now, we'd also like to encourage you to stay all the way till the end because we do have a post-webinar survey, and 2 participants who complete the survey will get to win $10 fair price online vouchers. Now, everybody, today we're so happy to have with us Dennis. Now, Dennis has over 8 years of working experience in the capital markets and blockchain industry. His work experience includes roles in fund management, as well as leadership positions in digital assets exchanges. And of course, today he'll be shedding more light on the world of blockchain. So if you've got any questions for him, feel free to use the Q&A function at any time, and he'll do his best to answer them. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Dennis. Dennis, please.
Good morning, all. I'm going to share my screen so that we can take a look at my slides, okay? Everybody can see my screen just fine? Okay, today's talk is about the blockchain revolution that's taking place over the last couple of years, and noticeably a lot quicker in the last couple of months. All right. A little bit about myself. My name is Dennis. Thanks for the introduction, Karine. I have been working in asset management for a while. I've been working in blockchain and cryptocurrency space for a while. So it's my pleasure today to be speaking today in front of you about this topic that's very close to my heart. Okay. Today's agenda, what are we going to cover? Let's talk about blockchain. It's something that has been occupying the headlines a little bit more frequently recently. We're going to talk about what is blockchain. We're going to talk about some common misconceptions. Let's clear up the air about what some of these misunderstandings towards blockchain are. Then we'll talk about blockchain in Singapore, what actually is happening in our country. And then we'll talk about what the future holds for us. Okay? So to begin, what is blockchain? I think the best way to understand this is if we begin with a metaphor. Okay, let's start with a little story. To understand the whole concept of blockchain, this story begins in the island of Yap. It's a little village in the South Pacific. They had a very unique form of money. It looks like this. Okay, it's a gigantic limestone rock with a hole in the middle. They call these the face stones. It's bigger than a man. They probably weighs like 200 kilos or something like that. Okay, so literally very difficult to move around. So what's the problem with using these rocks as money? Okay, now, first of all, these rocks were used as money for things like wedding gifts. These rocks were used as money for things like political enticements, for things such as to pledge an alliance with another tribe. But what was the problem with using these rocks as money? Obviously, they were very large, they were very heavy, and relatively fragile too, right? Take a look at this tourist standing with this rock. Clearly, it's very huge, right? So it wasn't very practical to move them around. And that was the problem that this village noticed about their system of currency. So what did the Yapese people do? They said, you know what? Let's create a new system. They created a very primitive form of what we know today as a blockchain. Okay, so what does this all mean? What does all this mean? What did they do when they created this primitive form of a blockchain? Since these rocks were so heavy, these rocks were so gigantic and cumbersome to move around, instead of moving these stones around back and forth, what they would do instead is every time they want to make a transaction, they'll simply announce these changes in ownership of the rocks. They announce it to each other, right? They call the entire village together. They announce it, and together they memorize who owns what, who received what from who, and where each rock can be accounted for. All right, got it? So they commit to their memory as a village, they commit to their memory the entire movement of all the rocks in their circulation. So everyone in this community, they collectively manage the face stone transaction records, and through an oral ledger, right? They talk about it, right? They talk about it, they tell stories about it, and in so doing, they pass it down generations. So every single generation, they maintain the records of the previous generation, of the ancestors before them, all through their memory, all through spreading the stories by word of mouth about who owns what. Okay? So, knowing what we just talked about in this story, if you replace these concepts, you might actually understand what the blockchain is like. So take these Yapese people, right? The Yapese people, they are part of a community. If you replace them with computers, you basically get a computer network, right? Each of these villagers, imagine them to be computers in a computer network. And their human memory, the transaction records that they all store in their minds, imagine if all of that was stored in a digital ledger, a permanent electronic record. Now imagine if those stones were actual bitcoins. Together, this computer network with its permanent record, circulating bitcoins back and forth into each other's wallets, that is literally what you can imagine a blockchain to be like. Okay, so this village, right? This village who have been passing the stones back and forth, but not in physical form, but telling each other who owns what when they change the ownership of those stones, and they memorize that. That was, in fact, the first recorded example of the mechanism of the blockchain. So let's summarize. What is a blockchain? It is a type of database where the information is transparent. Kind of like the village, right? Kind of like the Yapese village. When they want to make a transaction, they announce it to the entire village for every adult to go remember. So it's very transparent. It's a permanent and tamper-proof record, which means that if somebody was to forget what the latest statement of accounts was, all they got to do was ask their neighbor, and their neighbor would say, this is what the latest transaction records looks like. And everyone basically has a permanent record of all the transaction records. Now, this system is also decentralized and distributed across the entire island. Or in the case of a blockchain, it's decentralized and distributed across the network. Okay, so put these concepts together and you kind of start to understand what a blockchain is. Now, we're not getting too technical today, right? We're not going to go too technical today because today is not going to be a computing science class or a very technically heavy class. We're not going to learn coding or programming or anything like that, but we're going to learn the broad overview of this technology called blockchain and how actually it manifests in Singapore in many forms. All right. So let's clear up some common misconceptions because I think some of you might be quite exposed to this topic, but at the same time, many of you are, if you only heard, whatever you know about blockchain may only be in passing. So let's clear up some misconceptions. Okay. Misconception number one, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, blockchain, they are equal to each other. This is a misconception, okay? Imagine if I was to say, internet equals to social media equals to Facebook. instantly you would know that's a wrong statement to make, right? But with this analogy here, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and blockchain, they similarly are not interchangeable words. Bitcoin is one specific brand. Cryptocurrency is one application that is powered by this technology called blockchain. All right, so hope you understand that. I hope you understand there's a small difference there. You might, in some cases, notice that they're all appearing in the same article. In many cases, you might even see that they all appear in the same sentence in the same story, but they're not interchangeable words. Okay. Misconception number 2: blockchain is used mainly by criminals. Blockchain is mainly used by money launderers, by terrorists, by drug dealers. Now, that might be a little bit more true in the past, but in 2020, less than 1% of all cryptocurrency volume and activity was attributable to criminal activity. All right, so blockchain is no longer has that same image that it used to have, where very dodgy transactions take place. Nowadays, most of the transaction volume that's coming through, it is not criminal anymore. Criminal activity only forms less than 1% of all activity on the blockchain. This is proof. This has already been proven by blockchain analytics firms and digital analytics firms. Okay. In fact, I think it's 0.34% of transactions that are only owing to criminal activity. Misconception number 3: blockchain is too technical for me, and I will never find a job in this industry. That is not true either. Okay, blockchain is, well, it might be a technical subject, or it might be a computing science data kind of subject. In fact, there are many different kinds of roles in blockchain. For example, non-technical roles such as sales, such as marketing, such as any organizational supporting roles such as HR or finance, they can also find employment in this space really quickly. You don't have to be a coder, you don't have to be a developer, you don't have to be a programmer, only just to find a job in this space. Okay, so if you were to equip yourself with some fundamental knowledge of blockchain, attend some of the courses with NTUC LearningHub, attend some of the courses, or even do some self-learning on your own time, on Reddit, on YouTube, watch some tutorials, listen to some podcasts, you might find that you would be equipped to handle an interview really well. All right, so clear up these misconceptions, open up your mind, and you realize like there's a lot of opportunity in this space, especially for those of you who are looking to try something new. When I first started working, blockchain was a very new concept that not many people heard of. But somewhere along the line, it looked like it became a more and more appealing industry. And through self-learning, there was no formal education in blockchain, right? Everything you had to learn about blockchain was acquired through Reddit or YouTube. That education alone is enough for you to prove to an interviewer that you have the motivation or drive to go educate yourself. Okay, so right now, things are a little bit more structured. There's a little bit more educational programs. In fact, you know, even with Singapore, we have Skills Future credits for some of these courses. Take full advantage of that, right? Take full use of that and get yourself upskilled. So let's talk about blockchain in Singapore. Let's bring it close to home and see what we are doing over here in Singapore. Before I get into this, think about a time, let's say 20 or 30 years ago, right? If anybody wanted to start a career in tech 20, 30 years ago, where in the world would they most likely move to in order to start a career in tech? Some people would say Silicon Valley, right? Some people would say the US, and that is true, right? Because that's where a lot of people moved to in the late 90s and the early 2000s to go start a career in tech. Now, interestingly, that trend has kind of switched. Many of these blockchain startups all around the world, they might be founded in other countries, right? They might be founded in China, they might be founded in Germany, they might be founded in the US. Many of them are shifting the headquarters over to Singapore. So they may be founded somewhere else, but they're shifting their headquarters to Singapore, right? Within a span of 20, 30 years, people would move out of Singapore to start a career in tech. 20, 30 years later, people are moving to Singapore to set up their headquarters for their tech startup. All right, so there's a lot of opportunity here in Singapore. In fact, we are actually really lucky to be where we are. So let's take a look at some of these examples, okay? Where can blockchain technology be applied? In healthcare, right? COVID-19 has clearly been an issue for the world. Currently, Singapore is using blockchain for verification of COVID-19 test results. This means these are records that cannot be tampered with. These are records that are stored in a private manner. This is something that we call health, health certs. Okay, so blockchain can be used in healthcare. Blockchain can be used in supply chain and logistics. Take a look at this interesting study, right? Singaporeans love durians, right? Durians is a king of the fruits, right? A blockchain startup has started to track the shipment, the origin, the provenance of durians to make sure that only quality produce is sold to end consumers. All right. So you can start to see very diverse things, right? We're using blockchain for COVID, using blockchain for durian tracking, using blockchain for banking, which this one seems to be pretty straightforward. Blockchain and finance and tech have always been related. So MAS, Temasek, JP Morgan, they have developed a prototype network called Project Ubin, clearly named after one of our little islands, Project Ubin. Project Ubin is a network used for cross-border payments, used for settlement of your securities payments in a multi-currency network, which means this is probably going to be the future of how we make interbank transfers. All right. Project Ubin is something that was started in 2016. Even before the hype cycle of 2017, our country was forward-looking enough to start experimenting with blockchain in 2016. Okay, the rest of the world kind of only caught on with blockchain and its hype in, I would say, the second half of 2017. But since 2016, we've been testing that out, and we've been rigorously testing this for 5 years already, recently concluding phase 5 of our proof of concept tests. Okay. Blockchain can also be used in education. The Singapore government leads this project called Open Certs to issue education certificates on a blockchain. Now, why is this important? Some of you might have heard of the issue of bogus degrees, fake degrees, right? Degree mills, where you can actually buy your qualification without actually being qualified for the particular role that you want to apply for. So let's say you want to be a doctor. Let's say you want to be a doctor and you buy a fake degree that says you are qualified as a heart surgeon. Okay, so I mean, there's such a service, right? The fact that you can actually buy fake degrees. Now, clearly, this poses a danger to community, right? Because imagine if you were a fake surgeon and you try to operate on somebody's heart and he died, right? That's clearly an issue, right? So Open Certs is here to verify that your education that you listed out in your CV, they're here to verify that that's actually true. They'll check their blockchain network to see if the university that you say that you're from, to check the university or the course that you say you graduated from actually exists, or you were actually a valid student there. Okay, so Open Certs helps to keep things a little bit cleaner in terms of employment, and it helps to prove that your education is legitimate. So Singapore, our government agencies such as MAS, they've started to work on this report together with some private companies such as PwC or Ernst & Young. They wrote the Singapore Blockchain Ecosystem Report. Now, let me just bring some insights to you. Okay, let me just bring some insights to you so that you can see that Singapore really has a reputation or really has an image as a blockchain hub in the world. Now, this first one, this report surveyed some respondents, and their results were tabulated or presented in these infographics. Okay, so the first question: what do you think is the outlook to blockchain in Singapore in the next 3 to 5 years? 45% of respondents said they believe that blockchain growth will accelerate, not stay constant, accelerate, right? So we already know it's growing at a really fast rate. But what these survey respondents felt in the next 3 to 5 years is that the growth of blockchain will be even quicker than where it is now. Right? That's 45% of people. The other respondents, they're saying things like they continue at a stable rate, or it'll come into mainstream, or there'll be other technologies that will surpass blockchain. But you can see the majority, an overwhelming 45%, already believe that this will grow even faster. Next question. Survey respondents were asked, in your opinion, what territories in the world are blockchain leaders? Okay, no surprise, the US and China, they come in at 81% and 68%. They are regarded as blockchain leaders in the world. Then there's Europe at 62%, but just behind them is Singapore. 55% of survey respondents considered Singapore a blockchain leader. Okay, tiny little red dot, Singapore is a blockchain leader in the world. Okay, that is the image, that is the perception that survey respondents have started to think of Singapore, right? We've always been known as a financial hub. Lately, we become known as an innovation hub, but it seems that our image has been shifting towards a blockchain leader as well. Next question. Survey respondents were asked, in their opinion, what are the top 3 technology trends in Singapore for this year? Now, in number 1 is AI and automation, but in number 2 position, that is blockchain. Blockchain is considered the second most important tech trend for 2021, according to these survey respondents. All right. So when it comes to blockchain, you can start to see that this is becoming a main conversation topic for companies, for founders, for investors, and all for the conversation of adoption. Now, what's in the future? What does the future hold? There are plenty of developments in blockchain. All right. I mean, not a day goes by nowadays. Not a day goes by nowadays where you turn on the news, you're on Facebook, you're on a personal investing group, you're on TV, right? And there's going to be an article or a story about what's going on in blockchain, what the price of Bitcoin is, what this price of artwork got sold at, so on and so forth, right? Now, there was a $12 million fund called the Singapore Blockchain Innovation Program that was just recently established. And this $12 million fund was raised with the intention to advance adoption of blockchain in supply chain and logistics. You know, there are probably 70, 100 companies or so that would be benefiting from this budget to advance us in this direction. Okay. We are starting to see more and more different applications of blockchain. So when it comes to blockchain applications such as cryptocurrency, they are now very obvious. But there are new applications such as non-fungible tokens, or what we call NFTs, which you might have heard of more recently. Now, NFTs are things like limited edition digital artwork, limited edition collectibles, one-of-a-kind IP, one-of-a-kind tickets, things that are not homogeneous and interchangeable with each other. We call them NFTs. So very recently, a very famous artwork was sold as an NFT for $69 million. The buyer happened to be here in Singapore. All right, so you can see for many reasons, Singapore is always appearing in it's always appearing in blockchain conversations, whether it's for the tech, whether it's for the development, whether it's for the perception, and now even for purchasing really expensive art. Now, Singaporeans, we also have something new to be proud of. There is XSGD. XSGD is a cryptocurrency whose value is always pegged to the Singapore dollar. This is launched by the payment network called XFirst. Now imagine what this does, right? When you have a cryptocurrency like XSGD. What it means is that you enjoy all the benefits of blockchain, such as the high speed, the low fees, the connectivity cross borders. You receive all of these benefits without the negative volatility of Bitcoin. All right, so you can send your money across the network really fast. You can shoot it across the globe to somebody else receiving on the other side of the world, all without the volatility of Bitcoin. So one XGD always is equal to one Singapore dollar. All right, so these are some of the many applications of cryptocurrencies and blockchain that we're starting to see in Singapore. A lot of support for innovation, a lot of new exploration of computer games, artwork, and also for our cross-border payment solutions. Okay, so lots of different developments, which means there's lots of opportunity for us to capitalize on. All right, now all of you here, right? All of you here got out of bed before 9 a.m. to attend this talk, to figure out what blockchain is about, to get a little bit of an introduction to what this new technology is about. I think that's very commendable. I think this is something that you can build upon. You clearly have demonstrated an interest in this subject, right? So why not explore how you can tap on this opportunity, not just as an investor, right? Not just as an investor who wants to buy Bitcoin or Ethereum or something like that, but also as a participant in the growth of this industry. There's lots of grants, there's lots of funding coming in, there's lots of employment opportunities. Don't just pigeonhole yourself into being an investor. Think about participating in the growth of this industry by also opening a company, working for a particular blockchain startup, so on and so forth. Okay. So that brings us to the end of our segment. We do have a blockchain community in Singapore. This is a thing that we do, that we share a lot of ideas. We talk about how we can get started with participating in blockchain activities. We talk about how we can do investments. We do community sharings once a month. We even have a jobs portal. All right, so people who want to look for internships, fresh graduates, students, undergrads. If you're looking for internships, here's a great place. If you're looking for opportunities with bigger firms, they also list their opportunities in these job portals. You can join this Telegram group, and we can continue having conversations over there. All right. So, well, that brings me to the end of this sharing session. I'm pretty sure lots of questions that are about to come through. So let's close this so that we can get to answering your questions, because I believe answering your questions, the targeted specific curiosities that you guys have, we will be able to deliver the value better in a way that you appreciate it more, so that you can learn faster. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Karine, you are able to pop back on.
Anyone who has questions for Dennis, you can use the Q&A function. We've got quite a bit of questions over here, actually. So Dennis, maybe you want to look through and see if there's any that you'd like to answer.
Okay. I appreciate all the questions. I want you guys to treat this like it's like a two-way conversation, right? It's not just like a lecture that you listen to and hopefully pay attention, right? So let's answer your questions, right? Let's see the first one. Margaret asked a question: would I recommend investment in cryptocurrency compared to Bitcoin, which is volatile? How to join cryptocurrency? Well, Margaret, Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is the largest cryptocurrency. So if you were to invest in cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin is generally the first point of entry for people. Now, none of these things, right? Sorry, just before I get a little bit carried away, none of what we talk about in here today is financial advice. None of what we talk about here is investment advice. I'm only giving you neutral opinions based on my experience as an asset manager. So don't go out of this room and say, oh, you know what, this guy talked about buying Bitcoin, so I must do it now. There's always a lot of risk involved. Bitcoin is a highly volatile beast, and if you're not prepared for that volatility, please either lower your allocation or steer clear to something that's a bit safer for you. Okay, so would I recommend investment in cryptocurrency? I think every portfolio can afford to do it a little bit. Nothing that hurts you if it disappears, but just a little bit of exposure, so that skin in the game is something that gets your education going. All right. Now, William asked a question, will this technology or system disappear overnight due to fraud, scams, or shady transactions? Um, Blockchain is famous for what we call trustlessness. Trustlessness means there's no need to trust. And how do we achieve trustlessness? Now, ironically, trustlessness is achieved when you don't have to trust a human being. That's an irony, right? You increase trust in a system, the less you have to trust a human being. So when it comes to frauds, when it comes to scams, all you got to do is verify that the computer code works. If the computer code works, that's all you need to know. You can trust that system, right? Let me put it this way. If you had a guy who gave you an Excel sheet and you don't know anything about this guy, right? You don't know anything about this guy, but you can move your cursor over to an Excel cell, read the formula in there, and if the formula makes sense, you can trust that the output of the Excel sheet is accurate without realizing, without knowing the background of this guy who created this Excel sheet for you, right? So it's all formula driven. There's no need to trust a human being, and therefore, this system, you can read whether it will disappear overnight or not. Okay. All right. Thomas asked a question. Can I explain more about my job as an example of a blockchain related job? Currently, what I do, Thomas, is digital asset management, which means investors leave their assets with us, hoping to grow it into a bigger portfolio. Okay. Now, I didn't always start here. I used to do that in a previous job, but then when I first started blockchain, my first entry into blockchain was in marketing related roles. Okay. After that, over time, you start to develop a taste for this thing, or you get some experience. You can pivot into many other roles. You can do sales, you can do HR, you can do community management, you can do PR. You can actually be a developer if the tech side of things is what appeals to you. You can be a engineer if the tech side of things appeals to you. So lots of different diverse range of jobs is possible. Okay. Anthony has a question. These examples Dennis is giving is blockchain, but it's not decentralized. I'm not sure which example, Anthony. Um, that's okay, all right, Anthony. So when it comes to blockchain, most of these cases, they are decentralized. If they were centralized and they were blockchain, it's kind of oxymoronic. Okay, it's kind of an oxymoron if a blockchain is centralized. So generally, those examples I gave to you were sufficiently decentralized for us to consider as blockchain examples. All right, next question by Rohaisman. How would I relate blockchain to cybersecurity? Blockchain actually increases security. Blockchain is tamper-proof. You can't really hack a blockchain. In theory, you could, but in practice, it will require you to expend too much energy. It requires you to invest in too much hardware for you to overtake what we call 51% of the control of a network. And so in theory, it is possible. In practice, quite impossible. Okay. Randy asked a question that says, blockchain is used in supply chain. Blockchain used in supply chain is the digital part. Are there processes to ensure the physical transfer is foolproof? That's when you want to log, let's say, an entry into the blockchain. Somebody scans a QR code. So it's like a receiver scans a QR code. The warehouse that receives this supply chain shipment, they scan a QR code. This all appears in a ledger that is held in a network. So that's the digital part, yes. But a physical transfer can only be verified when someone actually receives the goods and scans the QR code. Okay. Jasmine asked a question. How does blockchain verify the integrity of any information fed into it? Jasmine, this is done through a consensus by the entire community. The entire community will have to agree and mutually verify that something is correct through the use of a consensus mechanism. Now let's get a little bit technical, but this consensus mechanism basically forces everybody to make sure that no malicious transactions are being added to the blockchain's ledger. No malicious records are being added to the ledger. Okay. Jonathan asked a question. Can I please share the link to the Singapore Blockchain Ecosystem Report? Actually, if you Google Singapore Blockchain Ecosystem Report 2020, you will find that under Open Notes. Let me just type it here. Thomas has a question. How is it tamper-proof in a world where cybersecurity is compromised continuously? Now, the reason why cybersecurity or let's say, okay, the reason why you're asking this, right, Thomas, is because I believe you might be referring to cases such as SingHealth or Singtel, where consumer data was leaked or compromised and there was a security breach, right? Now, the reason why that happens is because those databases are held centrally. They are held as the data is given over to a custodian. In this case, the custodian is either SingHealth or Singtel or Lazada or any of these guys who have had security lapses. Now, when it comes to blockchain, the custodian of that data is not with a central party. The custodian of that data is held in your wallet. If anybody wants to access that data, they have to seek approval from you. They have to request permission from you. Okay, so if you think about it that way, where your data is no longer surrendered over to a custodian, you will see why blockchain is a little bit safer for the end user. Okay, Jennifer, what is the sample size and profile of the survey? It ranges from big companies with annual revenues of millions of dollars to global survey participants from all across the world. To get the exact numbers, you would have to take a look at the open notes because I don't have it offhand. I read the report, I got those screenshots, but I did not dig deeper into the sample size and survey. Okay. All right, Xia Xiu's asked a question. Understands the definition of blockchain, but don't quite understand how blockchains can be applied to the Singapore examples shared. Or is that too technical? For the purposes of today, maybe a little bit technical, but let me just go through one of the examples. Let's say with the which example can we use? Let's talk about the durians one. All right. So there are many different parties that are interested to know that durians are getting delivered. It could be the farm itself. It could be the warehouse, the distribution center, the supermarket, the retailer. All right. Now, each of these parties, the durians pass through their hands. Now, let's say you are talking about a point of contamination. You want to know exactly and isolate exactly where that happened, right? Food poisoning, contamination. You want to know exactly where that happened. So what these networks are reimagined to become is that every participant on this network, they now work on one flat shared ledger that is shared between all these people in the supply chain. Now, each time they pass the durian through their hands, whether it's from the farm to the distribution center or the distribution center to the supermarket, each time these durians pass through their hands, they have to share and log their entry that these durians are now with us, right? So the blockchain ledger now basically is transparent between all these participants, and they get to see the latest update as to what's happening to these durians, right? So this blockchain secures this so that no one can tamper with it. Consumers have full confidence that the durians are fresh, and anyone can verify the status of these durians. Okay. All right. Thomas asked another question. What's the advantage for an SME to include blockchain into the selling and payment process? Thomas, you can think of selling and payment process like let's say when you do an international cross-border payment. That would be something that, let's say, maybe they use Swift network. And we know the Swift network has a lot of problems, such as high intermediary fees, a lot of delays because of middlemen, because of correspondent banking. So using blockchain, things a lot more direct, things a lot quicker. And for that reason, that's one of the big benefits, right? You're passing on cost savings to the end user. You're keeping some of this cost savings for yourself as higher profit margins, things like that. Lydia asked a question. Can I briefly explain how blockchain makes it difficult to tamper with the digital education certificate stored in a database? Now, let's say you are applying for a job as a, I don't know, programmer, okay? And you just write on your CV, oh, I came from MIT. Now, that is not very reliable, right? So lots of people with fake degrees have been getting past HR teams just by putting some university and some qualification on their CV. Then they get hired because they look good on paper, right? So blockchain actually makes sure that nobody can put, let's say you are a class of 2020 MIT. Now, if you were to verify MIT using, let's say, the Open Certs application, and MIT says, yeah, this person actually exists in our database, then the HR team is very confident that you actually are a legitimate graduate of MIT. But let's say you just made it up. Oh, I'm a valedictorian of NUS in the year 2021, class of 2021. And you check the ledger in NUS records, and it says, now, this guy was not the valedictorian. This is clearly not the valedictorian because the valedictorian was some other guy instead. Now, that is where the digital certificate proves the authenticity of your qualification. It is not so much about the tampering here, but to prove that and to prove and verify that you actually have graduated from this place. Okay, Carl asked a question. Does the continued growth of blockchain adoption drive the demand for cryptocurrencies? Are they related? Somewhat. As blockchain adoption becomes more widespread, many of these tokens are required to power these networks or power these applications. This is the case for Ethereum, for example. There are lots of updates for blockchain networks constantly as well. All right, so this would drive the optimism as well when it comes to higher adoption, right? Because higher adoption numbers, stronger networks leads to more investment. And it's, in this case, I do believe the token price is somewhat correlated. All right. In which industries, JL asked a question, in which industries does Singapore uniquely have a lead in blockchain when compared to US, China, or EU? I would say that in terms of where we are sitting in Asia, we do become a hub because of the way our regulations are so friendly towards blockchain and cryptocurrency startups. Now, I wouldn't say that we, like the regulation part is very good angle because let's compare to countries like, let's say, India, right? They have banned cryptocurrency, they unbanned it. They banned it again, they unbanned it. So it becomes a very ambiguous stance. Nobody really knows what's the stance there. Or let's say Russia, say, if you have cryptocurrencies, it is illegal, something like that, right? So it becomes a very harsh stance towards cryptocurrencies. So in terms of where we have a lead in blockchain, I would say our regulatory environment is very friendly towards it. You can see things like our Payment Services Act is trying to build a framework for digital payments in the future, which I also believe will benefit blockchain, right? So in terms of regulations, we are quite advanced and quite forward-thinking in that sense to drive adoption and development in the space. Muling asked a question. What is the impact of 5G on digital banking and blockchain? I guess it just makes connectivity faster and everyone's, it just makes the ease of use a lot better as well. Mark asked a question. How can blockchain be tamper-proof when hacking is always possible? I think what you are referring to, the hacking refers to when the centralized parts of blockchain get hacked. Blockchain as a concept, it is by definition quite hack-proof. It is only when, ironically, a blockchain startup uses a centralized structure that they can get hacked. In this case, such as cryptocurrency exchanges, which have centralized models. Okay, so philosophically, I know it's very ironic. They are blockchain startups, they're supposed to be decentralized, but the mechanism and the infrastructure that they use is centralized, which means there's a single point of failure that the hackers can go after and steal money. All right. Elisa asked a question. How is blockchain different from the current electronic transfer of money? It's a different mechanism altogether. Blockchain keeps a transparent record, whereas the electronic transfer of money, such as SWIFT, those or correspondent banking, those are centralized they are centralized counterparties of your fund transfer. Okay. John asked a question in blockchain, who maintains the ledger? Well, who maintains the ledger is the entire community, the entire computer network. They are all policing each other. They're all making sure each other is putting only correct transactions onto the blockchain. They're all verifying each other's work. All right. Are they regulated like the exchanges or clearer? Currently, I would say regulations are not robust yet for blockchain. So I wouldn't say there's a formal body that governs this. There seems to be a company for every type of blockchain out there. So how do we know which ones are reliable? John, the same way that you would read, you look at the stock market and you're trying to figure out which company is reliable, right? You got to go through their annual report. You got to speak to the team, listen to their interviews, interact with them directly, find out if their roadmap is realistic, whether they can deliver on schedule. Basically, everything that you do, let's say you compare to a traditional company, you want to analyze it. Same way, many of those principles you can use to analyze a blockchain startup as well, right? The quality of the team, who are the backers, the VCs that are funding this startup, so on and so forth. Janice asked a question. What's the difference between Bitcoin and cryptocurrency? Bitcoin is one specific brand, the largest cryptocurrency currently, right? The entire cryptocurrency market value, Bitcoin forms about 50 to 60% of the entire market share. All right. So whatever the cryptocurrency market value is, around $1 trillion, Bitcoin forms about 50 to 60% of that entire market value. All right. So it's the largest one. Bitcoin is one example of a cryptocurrency. Okay. Jonathan asked a question. As a Singaporean looking to start a blockchain startup, what grants am I eligible for? Even if it's before a blockchain startup, I think you can look at some of the blockchain organization. I'm not sure if Access can help or whatever, but let me just type it for you. They might be able to help you here. I don't specifically know which grants are available. Kim Say asked a question. Missed a slide on the first misconception just now. The first misconception is that blockchain, Bitcoin, and crypto are all interchangeable words. Right? That's a misconception that we cleared up. Penghua asked a question. Your answer to why spend so much green energy, cost effective to mine coins limited in mine. Not quite sure what you're asking, Penghua. Okay, Anthony asked a question. How do I get involved in this community? So previously, right, Anthony, it was a lot easier when we had physical face-to-face networking sessions, when we had seminars, and those were very, very popular, right? People would actually attend seminars once a week. Networking events, you can see people from the industry. And after a while, you start to realize the industry is very small. And you start to see you start to see the same faces over and over again in these events. Now, those networking events obviously are no longer possible. They're kind of a thing of the past, thanks to COVID. So right now, I see a lot of networking happens in communities such as Discord, such as Telegram, Facebook groups. You can definitely find people over there, right? And ask a question. Is it possible for someone to fake a digital ledger? Well, not quite, because everything's verifiable with your own eyes. So if the digital ledger doesn't really make sense, if you can take a look at the code and you realize, wow, there's nothing real going on in here. In fact, that's what we call a blockchain explorer. Every blockchain has a blockchain explorer where you can see all transactions that are taking place. You can see all wallet addresses that are interacting. And if those are not legitimate addresses, If those are not legitimate transactions, it's very easy to spot that it's a fake digital ledger. Okay. Millen asked a question. I am a foreigner and pretty much interested in learning to move my profession towards this direction. What do I suggest? Well, I suggest getting a more exposure to this industry first. Uh, have more conversations with the community. Start registering your interest in different networking webinars. Once you get your skill set known, and you can combine your existing skill set with something that blockchain is in need of, that will help a lot, right? Let's say you are a great UI designer, UI UX designer, then bring those skill set over to blockchain startup to say, hey, you know what? I can make your app a little bit better, or I can make the experience for your users something more intuitive. Then bring those old skill sets over, right? Or let's say you are a PR or journalist or something like that, and you know that you have connections in many of these publications, and you're able to help these blockchain startups place articles in these high-profile publications. And go ahead and offer that, right? As long as you're adding value to a blockchain startup, and they need all hands on deck, as long as you are able to add value, you will definitely get an easy shot at working for them. All right, many of these companies have got good budgets. They just need to make sure that they're hiring valuable talent. Zailani asked a question. I have a use case for a solution that I think can be addressed using blockchain. Where and who can I approach to actually discuss the feasibility, costs, and other factors? I'll just join a Telegram group, Zailani, and look for potential co-founders. That is quite a common strategy. Is you want to start a startup, or you have an idea in mind. Just go bounce some ideas off blockchain friends, and if the idea sounds feasible, if it holds water, people can say, okay, I want to be a co-founder. Let's build this together. Right? Jess asked a question. What happens if the system breaks down? What is the backup? Well, if the system breaks down, it will require, like, let's say, a global wipeout of a lot of computers simultaneously. So that generally is quite unlikely to happen. It is more likely for a bank to go down than a blockchain network to go down. All right, so what is the backup? As long as one computer survives this, that is your backup. Because at all points in time, all right, Jess, the records in every single computer will always look identical. So as long as one computer survives this entire breakdown, that computer can be used to replicate and populate the entire globe again with the blockchain records. Hon Kwan asked a question. How come Bitcoin can be mined? This is a mechanism, all right, for Bitcoin mining. This is a mechanism to reward people for making sure that transactions on the network are correct, right? So Bitcoin can be mined as a reward for securing the Bitcoin network. You earn Bitcoins when you mine it because you are doing the job of making sure transactions and records are accurate. Okay, that's a very layman explanation of it. Nikhil asked a question. Can a regular finance and accounting professional also benefit from this technology? If yes, how can finance professionals learn and train themselves on blockchain? Attend the NTUC LearningHub courses, right? You got Skills Future credits there. You can go ahead and use those. Especially, I think after COVID, we all got an additional couple of $100 to go ahead and spend, right? So use those fully. I think having that on your CV shows that communicates to your future employers that you're serious enough that you went to get some education on it. All right, but otherwise, finance and accounting, man, those are very clear-cut cases for people who can cross over to blockchain, because accountants understand ledgers, accountants understand risk management, finance people understand like asset management and flow of control or ownership of assets. It's a very easy switch into this new field. Okay. Brant asked a question, are there any new technologies in development that may be replacing blockchain? You can look at other distributed ledger technologies such as Hashgraph, such as DAG. They're all competing on the same idea that they are distributing ledgers across the world. So you can look into those, and let me just type it there for you. DAG hash graph. Brad, you should be able to take that.
Meanwhile, everybody, so I understand that some of you are posting questions in the chat function, some of you are posting in the Q&A function. Can you just trouble all of you to just direct your questions to the Q&A function, because it's very easy for the questions to be lost under the chat part. So thank you so much. We've got over 100 questions. Dennis is doing his best to answer them, so appreciate your patience as well. Back to you, Dennis.
How much time do we have left?
Let me do a quick check. This session is until 10:30, so we still have 30 minutes.
Okay, great. Okay, sorry, I just figured out that this the new button. Is Singapore government pushing blockchain as an area of growth? Yes, they are. They absolutely are, which is why they have a $12 million fund in order to advance blockchain in supply chain. All right, blockchain in logistics, blockchain in supply chain, trade finance. They have a $12 million fund for that. It's called the SBIP, Singapore Blockchain Innovation Program. All right. Okay, there's a question here. Hi, I know the basics of blockchain is to securely encrypt information. I would like to know more on how blockchain would benefit business operation beyond financial applications. For example, the aviation industry. Well, what I would say is, because the aviation industry, let's say you're servicing planes, right? Let's say you're servicing planes. This is a very sensitive issue. First of all, it's very costly. Second of all, the repercussions of not servicing your planes are also very costly in terms of human life, right? Let's say a plane went down or something like that because of poor servicing records. Now, these servicing records, these maintenance records, even the records of your inventory or your parts in your aviation, they can be tracked on the blockchain to make sure that the servicing and maintenance is not tampered with. All right. Who updates the data within the blockchain? Well, this is updated by any computer who wishes to play the role of a validator, someone who wishes to who choose to verify data as a service. They will get a reward. They will get compensated for it pretty handsomely. So it is now something that they all compete to do. It is a viable business just to mine Bitcoin, for example. And as a miner of Bitcoin, basically what you're doing is making sure you are keeping the data on a blockchain current and secure. So who updates it? Anybody can do it. As long as you have a little bit of programming knowledge and some hardware or some minor investment, you're able to do it. Okay. What jobs are related to blockchain? Well, all sorts of jobs, right? Super technical jobs, software developer jobs, regulations, finance, marketing, HR, all sorts. All right, community management. You know, like you can actually have a role where your entire time is just to answer Telegram messages. You know, there's all sorts of different opportunities. What is the extent to which supply chain has adopted blockchain? Any examples? Well, many examples. Many. I could talk to turn blue in the face about this, but let me just give you one of the clear-cut examples, right? Now, for supply chain, you know that there are documents such as your bills of lading, the documents such as your letters of credit. Now, these are very important documents in supply chain. If you were, so basically they are like your proof of ownership of a piece of cargo, right? If you have the bill of lading, that is your ownership on the piece of cargo. Now, if you lose that document, it is a police case, right? Because the cargo now has no owner. So it's a police case. So that shows you how important these documents are. Unfortunately, many of them are still paper-based. You know, you pass it back and forth at the port, you know, maybe get caught in a storm or get blown overboard. Those are severe problems. why not store all those documents digitally as electronic bills of lading, a digital bill of lading on the blockchain? Then you can be sure they're secure and hard to tamper with. You can't manipulate those records. Okay, hopefully that answers your your question. This question. Sorry, I clicked this without reading it first. How do we invest with your company? We'll take it offline. I don't want to be promoting my work over here. Okay. Will blockchain be hacked? So centralization or decentralization, it's a spectrum, right? If you have 5 computers on a network, it is somewhat decentralized. But if you have 50,000 computers on a network, that's on this spectrum, it is way more decentralized, right? So the less decentralized a computer network is, the higher chance of hacking it. Now that's why Bitcoin and Ethereum, they're quite secure, because there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of nodes around the world securing this blockchain, right? So if it's centralized, it's easier to be hacked. If it's less decentralized, it's easier to be hacked. Okay. Jonathan has an interesting question. How did I get started in crypto? Well, to be very honest, somebody on Tinder in 2014 told me, "Oh, hey, you know what? I bought some Bitcoin," and I'm like, "What is Bitcoin?" 3 years later, it was 2017, in the height of the blockchain mania. I texted her and said, "Hey, do you still have that Bitcoin?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, I sold it already." So that was my first instance of someone ever telling me about Bitcoin, and ever since then, I just started reading a lot about it. Now, because I'm from a finance background, the investment opportunity interested me. So I went from bond trading, trading government bond futures is not particularly exciting or volatile, but Bitcoin created this level of volatility, which gave a lot of profit potential, and that's what got me started. All right, Jonathan. Shelling asked a question. Can I explain examples of blockchain used in HR? So blockchains have also got other mechanisms. It's not just cryptocurrency. Blockchain has also got other mechanisms such as smart contracts. Now, smart contracts are very useful for HR. For example, you can do your payroll with smart contracts. Smart contracts are blockchain applications. They basically handle automatic settlements based on specific conditions being met. All right. So in terms of HR payrolls, smart contracts can see that, oh, by a certain date, we have to pay out this amount of salary monthly automatically to our staff, or at a certain period, we pay out a bonus commission because of some performance that we measured from some other database. So smart contracts are very, very often used in HR payrolls as well. Okay. All right, Philip asked a question. For Bitcoin, there will ever only be 21 million Bitcoins. How many in the market right now? I would say there are probably about 18.6 million Bitcoins in circulation right now. So there are 21 million Bitcoins. They were all stuck in a code originally. And then as people secure the network, as people do their validation of transactions, miners start getting these Bitcoins as rewards. Now, there are currently 18.6 million Bitcoins in circulation, which means there's another 2.4 million Bitcoins still stuck in the code. All right. Now, the last Bitcoin will only ever be created in the year 2140. Now, I don't know about you, but I probably won't be around in 2140. So there's a long way to go. There's a long way to go. And this, out of this 18.6 million Bitcoins in circulation, there's lots of research that shows that 4 to 5 million of those Bitcoins are lost forever. Maybe people forgot the password to their wallet. Maybe people, maybe they died without doing the estate planning for the Bitcoin, and nobody can inherit that Bitcoin. So it's also shut out of circulation forever. So out of the 18.6 million Bitcoins, there's only probably 14 plus left, which shows you the scarcity is even greater than you think, right? Daryl asked a question. Bitcoin was created to be decentralized. It's easier for peer-to-peer payments. How do I think this would affect the financial institutions? I mentioned about new blockchain tech, but are they all centralized? But they're all centralized and controlled. Um, well, Daryl, Bitcoin is created to be a decentralized and peer-to-peer version, but think bigger than Bitcoin. Think about, like, let's say, blockchain in general. Now, there's this new field of blockchain called decentralized finance, or what some of you might have heard of as DeFi. It's a very trendy topic in the last, I would say, 8 months or so, 8, 9 months or so. Started somewhere around June or July. That DeFi really, really caught the attention of everybody in the community. Now, DeFi, what it does is it creates financial services on the blockchain. Now, you no longer need to show up to a bank. As long as you got an internet connection, as long as you got a blockchain wallet, you can interact with these platforms and take out a loan. You can interact with these platforms and create a piece of digital art. You can interact with these platforms and be a liquidity provider in an exchange. So they will start to take a bit of market share away from traditional financial institutions. But do I think they'll replace them? Not yet. Okay, so they definitely will capture some market share from traditional banking as more and more people start to move away from traditional financial institutions to blockchain. For example, a good example would be, let's say, the GameStop, the GameStop drama. When GameStop, there was this brokerage firm that shut out people from buying GameStop. Right? It penalizes the people who wanted to buy GameStop by making sure they couldn't buy it, they could only sell it. That's something that you can read in your own time. But that led to a lot of distrust towards financial institutions, and it also created this use case for DeFi because it was exactly what DeFi was capable of solving. Okay. Lulu asked a question. If Singapore government is involved in the blockchain projects, then will this still be considered as decentralized? Well, if the Singapore government is a client, right, a partner of the blockchain projects, and the governance and the management and the rules inside the blockchain are still community driven, then yes, they're still decentralized. Okay. Wan Xiong asked a question, how much work is being carried out to use blockchain technology in maritime and shipping? Sorry, I think we've answered this one, where important documents like bills of lading, like letters of credit can now be issued on a blockchain instead of being limited to a paper-based system. Okay, you can look at a few examples, a few classic cases where IBM has collaborated to do some logistics blockchains. You can take a look at this one called Exim Chain, EXIM. Exim Chain is one of the earlier supply chain blockchains. All right. Vivian asked a question. If an error is made in the record or block, how to correct the error? Well, it depends on what this error is, right? If this error is a malicious transaction, they cannot, no matter what, right? No matter what, if a transaction is posted onto the blockchain, if it's logged onto the blockchain, in principle, it is immutable, meaning that it cannot be rolled back, right? You should not be able to roll it back. You should not be able to correct an information that is part of the historic records. Only when the blockchain is under centralized control can it then undergo an edit in the past, which in that case would be quite antithesis to what a blockchain actually stands for. Right? So when it comes to an error, you can't correct it. Let's say you send your friend 50 Bitcoins by accident, and actually you intended to send to another friend. The only way that the error can be rectified is if your friend is good enough to send you back your 50 Bitcoins so that you can send 50 Bitcoins to somebody else instead. If you send that 50 Bitcoins to somebody by accident and he says, sorry, finders keepers, unfortunately, there's no help desk that you can call, no Control Z, no undo button to rescue you. It's just a system, the mechanism of blockchain. It's gone forever. All right. Leroy asked a question. Can I go deeper in blockchain for healthcare and the Singapore government? Any example like the vaccination campaign? So well, this COVID blockchain that we did, this is called health certs. It basically makes sure that people cannot falsify that their vaccination has been done or cannot falsify that their COVID records were a certain way, right? Because everyone wants to go travel. Everybody wants to, even if you're kept in home quarantine, you kind of want to like get out there, right? Now, most Singaporeans are quite law-abiding. We're all quite civic-minded, so that's fine. But there are cases in other countries, right, where people forge um, their swab test results because they just want to go to the airport and say, you know what, I don't really care. I just want to get on a plane, and they falsify those records. They forge it, and they get passed. Obviously, that leads to a lot of risk to the system because people might get infected if they were not actually tested negative, right? If they tested positive for COVID and they falsified these records and ran around, that is a big issue. So that's exactly what the verification of this COVID health certs does in Singapore. And I believe as our vaccines start to become as more of our population gets vaccinated, I believe this vaccine health records will also be reflected in this blockchain. Okay, so we can say that, yes, I got my vaccine in February, right? And there's no way that I can be making it up because I can open my SingPass or whatever that interface is and show that I did receive a vaccine from Pfizer or from Sinovac or whichever, and I can prove that it's right there. I've done it. All right. Vivian asked a question. Is the value of Bitcoin pegged to a certain commodity like gold? Not necessarily, not at all. In fact, the same factors that drive the allure of gold are the same factors that drive the demand for Bitcoin, right? For example, high inflation. For example, when the US government is printing trillions of dollars in stimulus, we know that drives inflation over time, right? So people from a previous generation, they would invest in gold as an inflation hedge. But when it comes to Gen Zs, when it comes to millennials, they are digital natives, right? We are digital generation. And so we decide like, okay, if I'm going to invest in an inflation hedge, I would choose Bitcoin instead of gold. So there are some overlapping factors that drive the value of gold and Bitcoin, but there are also some narratives and some key factors that are quite different. For example, Bitcoin scarcity, the scarcity narrative, the halving narrative, those are things that help to push up the price as well. So the value of Bitcoin is not pegged to gold, although there are other currencies, there are other cryptocurrencies whose value is pegged to gold, such as DIGIX. You can take a look at DIGIX. Sinyu asked a question. Whose computers are the distributed ledgers stored on? And is there an information privacy risk? Well, the computers that store these distributed ledgers, they're called nodes. And these computers, I mean, they can be anybody. It can be you, it can be me, it can be an organization, it can be an individual sitting in China, it can be a company sitting in Siberia. Any of these computers can store the digital ledgers. All right. Is there information privacy risk? Um, it's all encrypted and is relatively anonymous. You get a random alphanumeric string of your wallet address. Okay, so it's not like there's a major information privacy risk, and there are also disincentives for people who act maliciously on the network. So you get penalties, right? You get penalties for that. Kian Guan asked a question. I am not sure if this question is related to blockchain, but if so, please advise on what we read in the news lately about mining of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, using lots of energy. Is it about using blockchain? Okay, so let's think about it, right? It is true. It is true that Bitcoin does consume a lot of energy. Like the entire Bitcoin network probably consumes more energy than the country of Switzerland. Okay. Now, but at the same time, to balance out that narrative, to balance out that story, a lot of the energy that's used in Bitcoin networks, a lot of them are green energy actually. For example, a lot of the mining operations in China, they use hydroelectric power, which, as we know, is extremely green, it's extremely renewable. Okay, So a lot of the power costs is not pollutive. A lot of Bitcoin mining operations are run in, let's say, Siberia. Now, why is that beneficial to Siberia, right? Now, because when you mine Bitcoins, your hardware tends to overheat, right? It tends to rise in temperature. And when you mine Bitcoins in a country like Siberia, guess what? The environment is cold. You don't actually have to invest in cooling equipment to keep your energy, to keep your equipment cool, which therefore expends more energy, right? So you can see that countries like Siberia, countries like China, when they run their mining operations, they actually are saving, they're actually doing it with lots of renewable or natural energy. Okay, so yeah, it doesn't help the detractors support their story, but this is something that a lot of people don't talk about. The energy is actually green. Okay, Fungi asked a question. We heard stories of people forgetting their passwords and after um, what is that? They could no longer access their bitcoins. Now, in theory, a permanent disappearance of bitcoins from the 21 million is sorry. Let me try to understand this phrasing. Okay, the question is there really no way to recover those bitcoins? Well, if you don't give your private key to anybody, if you don't do your estate planning in a let's say a way that distributes your bitcoins after you are no longer capable of retrieving them, well then yes, they very much are gone forever. Okay, is there insurance schemes for that? I believe there are innovative insurance companies that are starting to work on that. I believe there are innovative estate planning law firms that help you with that as well. Smart contracts for digital wills. That is also something that's starting to become uh, uh, a new growth area. Okay. Right, it's 10:17. We got a little bit more time, so let me just try and do as many as I can. Okay. William asked a question. Is it possible that this system or technology is syndicated by some strong financial institution or person or even countries of the world? William, I mean, I guess everybody loves a nice conspiracy theory or conspiracy story. In fact, there are speculators that there's a very convincing YouTube video. It's pretty funny to me. I watch it for entertainment. Whether I believe it's true or not, I really don't know. But the case is very convincing and it's quite entertaining to watch. This person speculates that the founder of Bitcoin, we know his name is Satoshi Nakamoto, okay? But this person with a channel speculates the founder of Bitcoin actually is Elon Musk. It cites a lot of evidence like, oh, Elon Musk was he started with PayPal, which was a digital payment system. And then he tweets about Bitcoin and Dogecoin all the time. He's used his company Tesla to go buy some Bitcoins. So this person speculates that Elon Musk might be the guy behind Bitcoin. So to answer your question, yes, everybody loves a good conspiracy theory, but in truth, it's very hard to prove it. So is it possible? It's a non-zero chance, but is it something that I can find evidence for? I can't say I can, right? Joseph asked okay, something that goes back to what we talked about in the misconceptions. Joseph asked a question. He wonders why there are less criminal activities as I've reported in the blockchain system. Why are there less criminal activities? It's because all transactions on the the ledger are visible. They're fully visible for everyone to see, right? So that means your digital footprints are actually all over the place. So if you were a wallet interacting with a known tainted terrorist account, eventually when you want to cash out, right? Like you want to cash out your cryptocurrencies to buy a car, to buy a house, just really to turn your Bitcoins into Singapore dollars. At the point in time when you turn your Bitcoins to Singapore dollars, there will be at a currency exchange, there will be at an OTC firm, there will be at one of these firms who requires a KYC. Now, when you have a KYC there, it creates a human personal identity for you. So any criminal realizes now that they don't have the full anonymity anymore because at any point in time, they may be doing all their criminal activities, but at any point in time, that they want to spend their Bitcoins, they end up revealing who they are. And that's when investigators can send a police car down to your home to say, hey, we'd like to bring you down to the station for a chat. That is why criminal activities have actually started to decrease. Blockchain is a tool against money laundering. It doesn't support money laundering. It actually, because of the permanence of the records, the transparency of the records, it actually fights criminal activities and money laundering, which is why criminal activity has dropped to less than 1% share of the entire blockchain's transaction activity. Raisman asks a question, do blockchains need to have a large number of interested parties to ensure no corruption-related issues? Yes. The larger the number of parties, the more decentralized your network is. And the more decentralized your network is, the less chance of collusion. And the less chance of collusion, it means the less chance for someone to manipulate the network. All right, so your thinking is correct. Richard asked a question, how many copies are made and shared with how many people? I'm going to assume that the copies you are talking about here refers to copies of the ledger. How many copies are made is how many computers there are who want to participate in this network. So if you got like 20, like let's say 200,000 computers that decide today they want to be on the Bitcoin blockchain and secure the network, you will have that many copies of the ledger floating around in the world. Okay. Alan has a question. Using blockchain for SMEs, is it expensive to start? How about other touch points? Does it mean my clients also need to be on blockchain? Or else how to sync up the info? Good question, Alan. This is talking about implementation. This would require you to do some actual cost benefit analysis, right? You actually have to decide, is my business revenue going to see any significant upside from the implementation of blockchain? Am I reducing cost? Am I cutting out a lot of labor? Am I automating processes? After you do this cost benefit analysis, now blockchain is not going to benefit every company the same way. Blockchain will not equivalently benefit every company the same way. Some will benefit more than others, depending on your scale, depending on your complexity of your business, depending on the layers that you have, the depth of your ecosystem. So I would say those companies that can benefit fastest are those with very strong networks who can align everyone's vision together to enjoy the benefits of the blockchain, because a network is only strong when everyone gives their buy-in. All right, you can't have half the network saying, oh, we want to be traditional pen and paper, and half the network that says they want to be on a digital ledger. That will make things very difficult for your integration. Hope that answers your question, Alan. Lamto asked a question, how does Shopee, Ali, GrabPay, how are they related to blockchain? I would say as of now, they are running their own digital payment service. They are not with blockchain yet. Although I think Shopee does have a collaboration with Binance in terms of one of their promotion discounts or something like that. Binance is a cryptocurrency exchange, and it's almost morphing into a digital bank, right? In some sense, it already is a digital bank. And I think Binance has a collaboration with Shopee. So, they're starting to find ways that they can work together. But when Shopee, Ali, and Grab were started, they were not started as blockchain startups. What are my thoughts on an Ethereum hard fork? If you're talking about London, if you're talking about EIP 1559, I fully support it, and I'm quite optimistic that we will get lower gas fees, and as a result, more adoption. So I think it's positive. V as a question. Hashgraph is challenging blockchain. Will blockchain be obsolete? Might be too early to call it. I think the pie is so large that the market is so large that both technologies, even though they're competing, they have a chance to get very strong supporters as of now. Now, blockchain just seems to be a very popular topic, and so more people, it has more mind share for people, but some people who know Hashgraph say it's a very viable competitor. I would say it's too early to call this. When it comes to competing technologies, right? Even with, let's say, videotapes, even with, let's say, music file formats. It's usually too early to call at the start until one emerges as a clear winner. And when that will happen, can't say I can give you a definite answer. All right, Thomas asked a question. I heard speed is an issue for crypto transactions as opposed to traditional money transactions. Can I explain how it really is and how it can improve? Let me just treat this the last question for the day. It's 10:25. Now, when it comes to traditional money transactions, let's say we're talking about Visa network or MasterCard network, they handle tens of thousands of transactions per second, right? Something like 60,000 transactions per second or something crazy like that. Now, cryptocurrencies or blockchains, they probably only handle double-digit transactions per second. Now, Ethereum probably handles like 15, 20 transactions per second or so, maybe even slower nowadays. So this is a challenge for blockchain right now. This scalability is a challenge, but in order to address this, many enterprising startups are also looking into solutions such as rollups, such as sidechains, such as layer twos. Now that got a little bit technical, but there are definitely startups that are working on these solutions. If you are looking at how they can improve that scalability, this is currently being addressed by all their scalability solutions. Okay. All right. Well, it's 10:26. That was overwhelming. I can definitely feel, right? I can definitely feel the level of interest regarding blockchain. I apologize that we could not address all of them because it's physically impossible to do so unless we had 10 hours to do that. And even then, I think we'll accumulate more questions at a faster rate than we can answer them. So thanks for your enthusiasm, guys. I'm going to pass the time back to Karine right now.